The council chamber on Unity Prime stretched out like a small city. Thousands of seats rose in curved tiers, each occupied by a representative from the hundreds of species that made up the Galactic Council. At the center stood a platform where petitioners made their cases. Today, that platform held Ambassador Lisa Grant of Earth. She had stood here many times before. 30 years of meetings, proposals, and careful diplomacy. 30 years of being told that humanity was not quite ready, not quite civilized enough, not quite trustworthy enough to join as full members. Provisional status, they called it. A polite way of saying that Earth could watch, but not participate in decisions that affected the entire galaxy. Lisa looked up at High Chancellor Vector, who sat on the highest tier in a seat that glowed with soft blue light. His species, the Velkari, had been part of the Council for 12,000 years. They considered themselves the wisest, most advanced civilization in known space. Vector looked down at Lisa, the way someone might look at a child asking to sit at the adult table. "Ambassador Grant," Vector said, his voice amplified through the chamber. "We have reviewed Earth's latest petition for full membership. The Council finds that humanity has made progress, yes, but concerns remain." Lisa kept her expression neutral. She had heard this speech before, with only minor variations. Always concerns, always reasons to wait. "Your species comes from what we classify as a Class 12 death world," Vector continued. "Your emotional responses remain unpredictable. Your history shows a tendency toward conflict. We believe another period of observation would serve everyone's interests. Perhaps another decade of provisional status." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Lisa noticed that many representatives were not even paying attention. Some reviewed data on their personal screens. Others talked quietly among themselves. Humanity's petition had become routine, expected to be denied like all the others. "Another decade," Lisa repeated, her voice calm. "That would make it 40 years total. 2 full generations of humans living under restrictions your own members do not face." Vector made a gesture that his species used to indicate patience with the slow-witted. "We understand your frustration, Ambassador, but the Council must think in terms of centuries, not decades. 40 years is merely a moment in the long view of galactic civilization." "And what would change in that moment?" Lisa asked. "What specific benchmarks must humanity meet to earn full membership? We have asked this question for 3 decades. We have never received a clear answer." The High Chancellor's expression hardened slightly. "The Council does not operate on benchmarks, Ambassador. We make decisions based on wisdom and experience. When humanity is ready, we will know." Lisa nodded slowly. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a data chip, holding it up for the chamber to see. "This chip contains humanity's withdrawal of all petitions for Council membership, effective immediately." The murmuring stopped. Silence filled the massive chamber. "Excuse me?" Vector leaned forward in his seat. "Earth withdraws its request to join the Galactic Council," Lisa said clearly. "We will no longer seek your approval or acceptance. Humanity will pursue its own path forward." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then laughter began. It started with a few representatives and spread through the chamber like a wave. The idea that humanity would simply walk away seemed absurd to them. Vector did not laugh, but his eyes showed amusement. "Ambassador, you do not want to make this decision in anger. Humanity needs the Council. Your trade agreements, your access to established space lanes, your protection from hostile forces, all depend on your relationship with us." "Our provisional relationship," Lisa corrected. "One where we have no voice in decisions that affect us. Where we pay the same fees as full members but receive none of the benefits. Where our ships require permission to enter regions of space that should be open to all. Those restrictions exist for good reason," Vector said, his tone sharpening. Species must prove themselves worthy before receiving full privileges. If you walk away now, you walk away from everything the Council offers. Lisa placed the data chip on the platform's surface. A holographic display appeared, showing Earth's official seal and the withdrawal documentation. Then we walk away. We asked for 30 years to be treated as equals. The answer was always no. We will not ask again. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her aide, a young man named Gregory Martin, fell into step beside her. The laughter in the chamber grew louder. Representatives from powerful species made jokes about human pride and human foolishness. Only one voice spoke against the laughter. Ambassador Shira Kai of the Therion Collective stood from her seat. High Chancellor, perhaps we should consider this more carefully. Humans have a reputation for determination. If they are making this choice, they may have reasons we do not see. Vector waved a dismissive hand. They will be back within the year, Ambassador. Humanity cannot survive in galactic space without our support. This is theater, nothing more. A dramatic gesture meant to frighten us into granting what they have not earned. Lisa heard this as she reached the doorway. She did not turn around or respond. There was nothing more to say. Earth had said everything that mattered with actions, not words. The walk through Unity Prime's corridors felt longer than usual. Gregory stayed quiet until they reached their shuttle. Once inside, with the doors sealed, he finally spoke. That went exactly as predicted. Lisa sat in the command chair and activated the communication system. Get me Admiral Hayes. Secure channel. The connection took only seconds. Admiral Karen Hayes appeared on the screen, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform crisp and formal. Behind her, Lisa could see the bridge of a warship, crew members moving with purpose at their stations. Admiral, Lisa said, it's done. They rejected the petition and dismissed the withdrawal as a tantrum. Karen nodded. Understood. All fleet groups are in position. Operation Independence is now active. Any resistance from Council monitors? None. They are not even paying attention to our ship movements. Their tracking systems show our vessels on standard patrol routes. Karen allowed herself a small smile. They see what they expect to see. Lisa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. 5 years of planning. 5 years of moving pieces into place while maintaining the appearance of peaceful negotiation. How long until the first phase completes? 6 months, maybe less. The Outer Reaches species are eager for contact. They have been ignored by the Council for too long, Karen said. Captain Mitchell reports the Horizon's Edge is already in position near the first target system. Good. Maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Let the Council think we went home to reconsider, Lisa instructed. Understood. Hayes out. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Lisa Grant walked out of the Council chamber. High Chancellor Vector expected weekly updates about humanity's inevitable return to negotiations. Instead, he received reports that made no sense. Say that again, Vector commanded, staring at the intelligence officer standing before his desk. The officer, a nervous Velkari named Drentok, consulted his datapad. Human vessels have been detected in the Outer Reaches, High Chancellor. Multiple ships operating in regions we classified as too dangerous for colonization. How many ships? Current estimates suggest 15 to 20 vessels, sir, but the reports are unclear. These regions have minimal sensor coverage. Vector leaned back in his chair, considering this information. The Outer Reaches were a frontier zone that the Council had abandoned decades ago. Pirates operated freely there, and several hostile species made the area too costly to patrol. What are they doing there? We believe they are making contact with isolated species, sir, populations that exist outside Council authority. Scavengers and primitives, Vector muttered. Let the humans waste their time in the garbage zones of space. They will learn soon enough why we abandoned those regions. But the reports continued. A week later, more intelligence arrived. Humans had not just made contact with isolated species. They had formed defensive agreements. 4 different populations had signed treaties with Earth, agreements that promised protection and technology sharing. Commander Zalthan, the Council's military strategist, requested an urgent meeting. Vector granted it, curious about what had the normally calm commander so concerned. Zalthan entered the office carrying a portable holographic projector. He activated it without preamble, showing an image of a human warship. This is the Horizon's Edge, commanded by Captain Ryan Mitchell. 3 days ago, this vessel and 5 others engaged the Red Claw pirate fleet. Vector knew the Red Claw. They had operated from a fortress in the outer reaches for decades, raiding supply convoys and attacking vulnerable colonies. Council forces had attempted to remove them twice, losing ships both times. Eventually, the Council decided the cost was too high and simply avoided the region. The pirates are still there, Vector said confidently. No, High Chancellor, they are not. Zal then changed the image, showing a debris field where the pirate fortress had once stood. The human fleet destroyed the entire stronghold in under 4 hours. No human ships were lost. Minimal damage reported. Vector stood up from his chair, moving closer to the hologram. How is this possible? The Red Claw had defensive shields that resisted our best weapons. The humans used weapons we have never encountered before, Zal then explained. Our analysts reviewed the battle footage. Human ships employed adaptive targeting systems that adjusted to enemy defenses in real time. Their missiles changed course mid-flight to exploit weak points. Their energy weapons operated on frequencies that seemed to shift deliberately to bypass shields. Where did they develop this technology? Vector demanded. Zal then met his gaze steadily. Apparently, while we kept them at provisional status, they were developing weapons independently. We assumed they would simply adopt our technology when they joined. We never considered they might innovate on their own. The High Chancellor walked to his window, looking out at Unity Prime's vast structure. What else do we know? They are building ships at a rate that concerns our analysts. Intelligence suggests humanity has manufacturing capabilities that rival our major industrial worlds. They may have hidden shipyards throughout their system. Impossible. We monitored their development. With respect, High Chancellor, we monitored what they allowed us to see. They hosted our inspection teams, showed us approved facilities, and answered our questions. But Earth is a large system with many moons and asteroid fields. There are places we never visited. Vector turned back to face Zalthan. Send Ambassador Shirakai to make contact. Deliver a formal message demanding they cease unauthorized expansion in the outer reaches. Remind them that all space activities should be coordinated with the Council. Sir, perhaps a more diplomatic approach. I gave you an order, Commander. Zal then bowed and left. Vector stood alone in his office, staring at the hologram of the destroyed pirate fortress. A small voice in his mind suggested this was becoming something more than a tantrum. He dismissed the thought. Humanity was young, barely a century in space. They could not possibly challenge an order that had stood for thousands of years. Ambassador Shirakai traveled to a neutral trading station called Haven's Rest, where Ambassador Lisa Grant had agreed to meet. The station existed in unclaimed space, serving as a gathering point for independent traders and species who operated outside Council control. When Shirakai arrived, she was surprised by what she saw. The docking bay held ships from species she recognized, populations from the outer reaches that usually avoided contact with Council representatives. They moved freely through the station, trading and socializing without fear. Lisa waited in a conference room, sitting at a table with representatives from 3 other species. Shirakai recognized them from intelligence reports. leaders of the isolated populations that had signed defensive pacts with Earth. "Ambassador Shirakai," Lisa said, standing to greet her. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Shirakai noticed that Lisa's tone had changed. 6 months ago, she had been diplomatic, careful, always measuring her words. Now she spoke with the confidence of someone who held strong cards in a game of strategy. "I bring a message from the High Chancellor," Shirakai began, taking a seat. "The Council is concerned about unauthorized human expansion in the outer reaches. All species are expected to coordinate space activities with proper authority." Lisa smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "The Council abandoned the outer reaches decades ago. You declared these regions too dangerous and costly to maintain. We are simply helping populations that your government left behind. The Council has jurisdiction over all space that contains sentient life," Shirakai said, reciting the official position. "Jurisdiction requires presence," one of the other representatives said, a being from a species called the Karathi. "Your council never helped us. When pirates raided our worlds, we called for assistance. Nobody came. The humans came. The humans helped." Shirakai turned to Lisa. "You are building a coalition against the council." "No," Lisa said firmly. "We are building a coalition outside the council. There is a difference. We are not trying to overthrow your government or declare war. We are simply creating an alternative for species who want one." "The High Chancellor will not accept this." "The High Chancellor does not have a choice," Lisa replied. "You cannot claim authority over space you do not occupy and populations you do not serve. We are offering these species what you refuse to provide: genuine partnership, mutual defense, and equal representation." Shirakai studied the human ambassador carefully. "You planned this. The withdrawal from membership negotiations was not an emotional response. It was a strategy. We hoped for 30 years that the Council would accept us as equals," Lisa said. "When it became clear that would never happen, we made other plans. We did not make those plans in anger. We made them in practicality. If you continue this path, conflict becomes inevitable." Lisa's expression grew serious. "Ambassador, Earth did not leave the negotiating table hoping for peace. We left it prepared for whatever comes next. We would prefer cooperation, but we will not beg for it." Shirakai realized she was not delivering a message to a desperate species seeking readmission. She was negotiating with a rival power that had already established its own sphere of influence. "I will report this to the High Chancellor." "Please do," Lisa said, "and tell him something else. Humanity is not going away. We are not coming back to ask for permission. We are here. We are growing, and we are building a future that does not depend on his approval." The meeting ended shortly after. Shirakai returned to her. The message arrived through encrypted channels, carefully routed to avoid council monitoring systems. Ambassador Lisa Grant read it 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. 3 minor species, all current council members, had secretly requested information about joining humanity's defensive alliance. These were not frontier populations barely surviving in unclaimed space. These were civilized worlds with established governments, species that had belonged to the Galactic Council for centuries. They were willing to risk everything to leave. Lisa brought the message to Admiral Karen Hayes during a secure communication session. "This changes things. If council members start defecting to our alliance, Vector cannot ignore us anymore." Karen sat at her desk aboard the warship Defiant Shield, her expression thoughtful. "It also makes us a direct threat instead of an annoyance. The council might respond with force. Are we ready for that?" "We have been ready for that since the day you walked out of their chamber," Karen said. "But I would prefer they understand what they are facing before anyone fires a shot. Fear of war often prevents war better than any treaty." 2 weeks later, Admiral Hayes issued orders for Operation Visible Strength. 60 human warships, pulled from various assignments across the outer reaches, gathered in a neutral zone called the Gray Expanse. The location was deliberate. It sat between Council space and the new territories humanity had been developing, a region where any species could travel freely. Council observers noticed immediately. Intelligence reports flooded into Unity Prime about a massive human fleet gathering for unknown purposes. Commander Zal then requested permission to observe directly. High Chancellor Vec Thor, finally showing genuine concern, agreed. The Council sent a delegation of military observers aboard an unarmed science vessel. They arrived at the edge of the Gray Expanse and deployed sensor arrays to monitor the human fleet. What they witnessed over the next 6 hours would be discussed in military academies for years to come. The human ships began a combat exercise that demonstrated capabilities the Council had never suspected. Their vessels moved with coordination that suggested either highly advanced artificial intelligence or some form of shared consciousness. Ships acted as a single unit, responding to threats before they fully developed, covering each other's weaknesses with perfect timing. But the technology impressed the observers even more than the tactics. Human shields adapted during simulated combat, changing frequencies and density to counter different weapon types. When one shield configuration proved vulnerable, the system evolved a new defense in seconds. Council weapons that should have penetrated the shields simply dissipated against barriers that learned and adjusted. The human weapons showed similar sophistication. Missiles launched from one ship would coordinate with energy beams from another, creating combination attacks that overwhelmed defensive systems. The weapons seemed to communicate with each other, sharing targeting data and adjusting their approach based on enemy responses. Commander Zal then watched the exercise with growing alarm. His aide, a young officer named Felmark, kept providing commentary that made the situation worse. "Sir, those energy weapons are operating on frequencies I have never seen before. They shift at least 8 times during each firing sequence." "Noted in your report," Zal then said quietly. "And their missile systems, sir. Those projectiles are making course corrections that should be impossible at those speeds. The G-forces alone should tear them apart." "Note that as well." When the exercise ended, Zal then had enough data to fill multiple reports. But one fact dominated all others. If this fleet represented humanity's military capability, then any single council member would struggle to match it. If the humans had more ships hidden away, as intelligence suggested, then they might already be the strongest single military power in the galaxy. The council observers returned to Unity Prime. Zal then delivered his report directly to the High Chancellor and the military committee. The response was immediate. Economic sanctions were prepared against species that continued relations with Earth. Trade restrictions were drafted. The Council was preparing to force humanity back into submission. Then Dr. Paul Chen made his announcement. The message broadcast across all standard communication channels. Dr. Chen, Earth's lead scientist for Jumpgate technology, appeared in a recorded statement that every species in Council space could access. "Today, humanity activates the first independent Jumpgate network," he said simply. "These gates provide instant travel between designated points in space, creating new trade routes and travel options for all species who wish to use them." The image changed to show a jump gate, a massive ring structure that glowed with blue-white energy. Ships passed through it, disappearing from one location and emerging light years away at another gate. The technology was not new. The Council had maintained jump gates for thousands of years. But those gates were all Council property, controlled by Council authorities, and subject to Council fees and regulations. Our gates operate in unclaimed space and territories controlled by our alliance partners, Dr. Chen continued. Any ship from any species may use them freely. We charge no fees. We impose no restrictions beyond basic safety protocols. The galaxy is vast, and travel should not be controlled by any single authority. Within days, human jump gates appeared throughout the outer reaches and in several systems where humanity's allied species lived. Ships that had been forced to use Council-controlled space lanes now had alternatives. Traders who had paid Council tariffs could now travel through human gates at no cost. The economic implications were staggering. High Chancellor Vector convened an emergency session. The Council was losing its control over galactic commerce. But before they could formulate a response, another incident shifted public opinion even further. Station Kalari 5 was a Council science outpost studying a dangerous region of space known for gravitational anomalies. The station housed over 3,000 researchers from multiple species. When an unknown hostile force emerged from the anomalies and began attacking the station, the facility sent desperate calls for help. The nearest Council fleet, a patrol group led by Captain Vortheris, received the distress signal. Standard Council protocol was clear. Do not engage unknown hostiles of superior strength. Preserve fleet assets. Wait for reinforcements. Captain Vortheris followed protocol. His ships moved to a safe distance and requested backup from Unity Prime. The response would take at least 6 hours to arrive. The station did not have 6 hours. Lieutenant Jake Foster commanded a small human squadron passing through a nearby system. They were not supposed to be anywhere near Council space. Officially, they were on a training mission. But when they intercepted the distress signal from Kalari 5, Jake made a decision. "All ships, plot a course to the station," he ordered. "Maximum speed." His communications officer looked worried. "Sir, regulations state we are not authorized to enter Council space without permission." "Those regulations can court-martial me after we save those people," Jake replied. "Move!" The human squadron jumped into the system 14 minutes after the attack began. They found the station's shields failing, its defensive weapons destroyed, and the hostile ships preparing for a final assault. The Council fleet watched from a distance, recording data but taking no action. Jake's ships did not hesitate. They engaged the hostile force immediately, using tactics and weapons that overwhelmed the attackers. The battle lasted 30 minutes. When it ended, the hostile ships were destroyed or fleeing, the station was saved, and not a single Council observer had fired a shot. Lieutenant Foster opened a communication channel to the station. "This is Lieutenant Jake Foster of Earth Defense Fleet. Your shields are restored. You are safe. We will remain in the area until Council reinforcements arrive." The station commander, a Velkari scientist named Shen Rall, responded with obvious emotion. "You saved us. You risked your ships to save us when our own fleet would not." "We do not leave people to die when we can help them," Jake said simply. "Foster out." The entire incident was recorded by multiple sources. The station's own sensors captured everything. The Council fleet's observation equipment documented their own inaction and the human intervention. Within hours, the footage spread across galactic networks. Citizens across Council space watched human ships risk everything to save strangers, while their own government's fleet followed protocol and did nothing. The comment sections on news sites filled with angry questions. Why did the Council abandon its own people? Why did humans show more courage than the species who claimed to lead the galaxy? Ambassador Shirakai watched the footage in her office, feeling that same shame she had experienced at Haven's Rest. She knew Captain Vortheris. He was a good officer who had followed proper procedure. But proper procedure had nearly resulted in 3,000 deaths. The humans had ignored procedure and saved everyone. Commander Zalt then entered the secure conference room where the High Council's military committee waited. He carried a data case marked with the highest classification level, information so sensitive that only a handful of beings in the entire Council knew its contents. "Gentlemen," he began, activating the holographic display, "I must brief you on a threat assessment that has reached critical levels." The committee members, military leaders from the Council's most powerful species, watched as data filled the air above the table. Ship counts, weapon specifications, manufacturing capacity, economic projections. All of it painted a picture that made Zalthen's career of military analysis seem inadequate for the challenge at hand. Current intelligence estimates place human military strength at a level matching or exceeding any single council member species, he said. Their alliance network now includes 15 species, creating a combined economic and military power that rivals the entire council's eastern sector. One of the committee members, General Korthax, made a dismissive sound. 15 species from the outer reaches, scavengers and refugees. They have no real infrastructure. That was true 6 months ago, Zalthen replied. It is not true now. Humanity has been sharing technology and resources with their allies. Manufacturing facilities are being built. Trade networks are expanding. What started as a collection of weak frontier populations is rapidly becoming a unified power block. He changed the display to show trade route data. Red lines indicated council-controlled shipping lanes. Blue lines showed the new routes using human jump gates. The blue lines were spreading, creating a network that bypassed council space entirely. Species that once depended on our infrastructure now have alternatives, Zalthen continued. They are choosing those alternatives because human gates charge no fees and impose no restrictions. We are losing our economic leverage. Another committee member, Admiral Shentok, studied the data carefully. What about military confrontation? Could we force them back into compliance? That is the wrong question, Zalthen said quietly. The correct question is whether we could win such a confrontation, and I am not certain we could. Silence fell over the room. These were beings who had commanded fleets for decades, who had studied warfare across 1,000 campaigns. The idea that humanity, barely a century into space travel, might be too powerful to challenge was almost impossible to accept. Explain, General Korthax demanded. Zalthen brought up footage from the fleet exercise in the gray expanse. Watch their coordination. Watch how their shields adapt. Watch their weapons adjust to enemy defenses in real time. We have spent thousands of years perfecting our military technology. They have spent 30 years developing something we never imagined. And they did it while we were watching them, confident they could never surprise us. He let the footage play out, showing the human fleet moving with machine precision, demonstrating capabilities that made council ships look outdated. If we engaged this fleet, we would win eventually. We have more ships, more resources. But the cost would be devastating, and there is evidence suggesting this fleet represents only a fraction of their total capability. The committee members exchanged glances. The implications were clear. Humanity was not seeking to overthrow the council through military conquest. They did not need to. They were simply building a better alternative, and species were choosing it freely. They are making us irrelevant, Admiral Shentok said, understanding dawning in his expression. Not through force, but through offering what we failed to provide. Elder Mirasun, one of the few non-military members of the High Council, requested permission to address the full assembly. High Chancellor Vector granted it, curious what the elderly representative from a minor species might say. Mirasun was known for quiet wisdom, but she rarely spoke in formal sessions. She stood at the central platform, her aged form seeming fragile compared to the powerful species that dominated the council. But her voice carried strength. "We are discussing humanity as a threat," she began. "But I must ask, what have they actually threatened? Have they attacked our ships? Invaded our territories? Demanded we submit to their authority?" Vector shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "They are undermining council authority." "No, High Chancellor. They are offering an alternative to council authority. There is a difference." Mirasun activated her own data display, showing reports from species that had joined the human alliance. These populations tell stories of requesting council assistance and receiving none, of paying fees for services never delivered, of being told they matter while being treated as if they do not. She changed the display to show footage of Lieutenant Foster's rescue of Station Kalari 5. Humanity does what we claim to do. They protect the weak. They foster cooperation. They treat their partners as equals rather than subjects. We established the Council to bring civilization and order to the galaxy. When did we forget that civilization requires service, not just rules? We have maintained peace for thousands of years, Vector argued. We have maintained our own power for thousands of years, Mirasun corrected gently. Peace for major species, perhaps. But what of the minor worlds? What of populations in frontier regions? We ignore them unless they offer resources we want. Humanity offers them protection, technology, and respect. Is it any wonder they prefer human partnership to council membership? The chamber fell quiet. Mirasun's words cut through decades of assumptions and comfortable lies. The council had become an empire focused on maintaining itself rather than serving its stated purpose. High Chancellor Vector recognized the shift in the room's mood. If he did not act decisively, he would lose control of the situation entirely. I am authorizing direct diplomatic contact with Earth's leadership. Ambassador Shirakai, you will arrange a meeting with their senior officials. The meeting took place 3 days later on Haven's Rest, the neutral station that had become a hub for humanity's growing network. Admiral Karen Hayes agreed to attend, bringing a small security detail. Ambassador Shirakai arrived with similar escort, along with Commander Zalven as a military observer. They met in a conference room with windows overlooking the station's busy commerce sector. Ships from dozens of species moved through the docking bays, representing the new order humanity was building. Karen sat across from Shirakai, her posture relaxed, but her eyes alert. She was a military commander who had spent decades preparing for scenarios just like this one. Shirakai recognized a fellow professional, someone who understood power and how it worked. Ambassador, Karen said, I assume you are here to discuss our activities in the outer reaches. Admiral Hayes, the Council made mistakes in its dealings with humanity, Shirakai began, choosing honesty over diplomatic evasion. We should have granted you full membership years ago, but the current situation cannot continue. If humanity keeps expanding its influence, if more Council members defect to your alliance, we face a crisis that could lead to war. Karen leaned back in her chair, studying the ambassador carefully. Earth spent 30 years asking to be treated as equals. We sent representatives to every council session. We followed every regulation. We paid every fee. And we were told again and again that we were not good enough, not civilized enough, not trustworthy enough. I understand your frustration. Do you? Karen interrupted, her voice still calm but carrying an edge. Do you understand what it means to be judged and found wanting for 3 decades? To watch your people dismissed as primitive deathworlders while you try to be patient and diplomatic? Shirakai met the Admiral's gaze steadily. No, I do not. My species was granted membership easily, thousands of years ago. We never faced what humanity faced. The honesty seemed to ease some of Karen's tension. The Council wants us to stop building our alliance, to step back and accept our place as a minor species. But we are past that point. We do not need the Council anymore. The galaxy is large enough for both of our organizations. Some Council members view your alliance as an existential threat, Shirakai warned. They will push for military action. Karen's expression hardened. Then they should understand something clearly. Earth did not walk away from negotiations hoping for peace. We walked away prepared for whatever comes next. We have been preparing for this possibility since the day Ambassador Grant left your chamber. You anticipated war? We anticipated everything, Karen said quietly. War, peace, economic blockade, political pressure. We planned for all of it. If the Council chooses conflict, they will discover that humanity is far more ready than they imagine. Commander Zal then, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "How long have you been preparing?" Karen looked at him directly. "Since we first applied for membership. 30 years ago, we hoped for acceptance. We also prepared for rejection. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It is a very human philosophy." The implications stunned both council representatives. For 30 years, while humanity engaged in peaceful diplomacy, they had also been building hidden shipyards, developing advanced weapons, and creating contingency plans for the day the council said no. The intelligence report landed on High Chancellor Vekthor's desk like a bomb. He read it once, then read it again, certain there must be an error. But Commander Zal then stood before him, expression grim, confirming that every word was accurate. "Hidden shipyards," Vekthor said slowly. "Throughout the Sol system. At least 12 major facilities," Zal then confirmed. "They built them inside asteroids, on moons we never bothered to scan thoroughly, in orbital positions that our monitoring satellites did not cover. We estimated humanity had perhaps 200 warships. Current analysis suggests the actual number exceeds 800. The High Chancellor felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. Not the abstract concern of political maneuvering or economic shifts, but genuine fear of a threat the Council might not survive. 800 ships, all developed while we thought we were watching them. "They showed us what we expected to see," Zal then said. "We sent inspection teams to approved facilities. We reviewed data they provided. We never questioned whether they might be hiding capabilities because we were so certain of our own superiority." Vekthor activated his display screen, reviewing the intelligence files. Images showed massive construction facilities, manufacturing stations, weapons testing ranges, all operating in secret for years. "What else do we not know?" "They have been conducting war games, High Chancellor. Extensive simulations against every major council species. They know our fleet compositions, our tactical doctrines, our political weaknesses. If conflict comes, they will not be improvising strategies. They will be executing plans they have refined for years." The galaxy suddenly felt much smaller and much more dangerous. The Council had spent 30 years treating humanity as supplicants. Those same 30 years, humans had been preparing for the possibility that diplomacy would fail. The situation deteriorated further when Captain Ryan Mitchell's ship, the Horizon's Edge, encountered a Council patrol in the border regions between Council space and humanity's growing territories. The patrol commander, a Velkari named Torvanis, had been sent to intimidate a recently allied species back into Council compliance. Mitchell's ship arrived just as Torvanis was threatening to blockade the planet if they did not renounce their treaty with Earth. The human captain opened a communication channel that broadcast on all frequencies, making the encounter public from the beginning. "This is Captain Ryan Mitchell of the Horizon's Edge. Council Patrol, you are engaging in threatening behavior against a sovereign species in their own territory. Cease immediately." Torvanis, backed by 3 modern Council warships, felt confident. "Human vessel, you have no authority here. This is a Council matter. Depart immediately or face consequences." "The species you are threatening is our ally. That makes it our matter," Mitchell replied calmly. "Last warning. Stand down." "3 ships against 1, Torvanis said with obvious amusement. "You cannot be this foolish." The response was swift and brutal. The Horizon's Edge engaged all 3 Council ships simultaneously. Within 90 seconds, all 3 were disabled, their weapons offline, their engines non-functional. Mitchell's ship had not sustained a scratch. The captain's voice came over the open channel again, now addressing the entire galaxy watching the broadcast. "Let this be a lesson. Humanity protects its allies. Any attempt to intimidate or threaten species under our protection will be met with immediate response. Council vessels are advised to avoid our territories unless they come in peace." The footage spread across galactic networks within minutes. Citizens who had been told the Council maintained overwhelming military superiority watched a single human ship disable 3 Council vessels with ease. The mythology of Council power crumbled a little more. High Chancellor Vector convened an emergency session of the full Council. Representatives packed the chamber, all of them aware that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy they had ruled for thousands of years was slipping from their control. The debate was fierce. Hawkish members demanded immediate military action to crush humanity before they grew stronger. Others argued for negotiation, pointing out that humanity had not actually declared war or attacked without provocation. The council was fractured, unable to agree on a response. Elder Mirasun requested the floor. When Vector granted permission, the elderly representative stood, looking older and wearier than before. "We stand at a turning point," she began, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "We can choose war with a power that has proven itself capable and prepared. We can choose to destroy countless lives fighting an enemy we created through our own arrogance, or we can choose wisdom." "They challenge our authority," General Korthax shouted from his seat. "We cannot allow that." "Our authority is already challenged," Mirasun replied. 15 species have left our sphere of influence. Dozens more are considering it. We did not lose them to human weapons. We lost them to human values. They offer what we stopped providing: genuine protection, honest partnership, and equal voice. She moved to the center of the platform, looking up at the tiers of representatives. "I have served this council for 60 years. I believed in our mission. But somewhere along the way, we stopped serving the galaxy and started serving ourselves. We became an empire of privilege and bureaucracy. When humanity asked to join us, we should have welcomed them. Instead, we dismissed them, and in doing so, we forced them to build something that may replace us entirely." The chamber erupted in argument. But Vector, watching from his elevated seat, finally understood the truth in Mirasun's words. The Council had created this crisis through its own failures. Fighting humanity would not restore the Council's power. It would only prove that the old order deserved to fall. He raised his hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke words that would change everything. "Send a message to Earth. The Council requests a diplomatic summit with humanity and their allies. We will meet as equal sovereign powers to discuss the future of galactic governance." Ambassador Lisa Grant received the message aboard her ship as it traveled through human-controlled space. She read it carefully, noting the change in language. Not a summons, not a demand, a request. She consulted with Earth's government and the leaders of the allied species. Together, they drafted a response. Humanity would attend the summit, but they had conditions. All members of the Human Alliance would participate. Discussions would address not just Earth's status, but fundamental reforms to how the Council operated. And the summit would take place at Unity Prime, but humanity would arrive as partners, not petitioners. 2 weeks later, Lisa's ship approached Unity Prime once more. But this time, she did not come alone. 50 vessels accompanied her, representing humanity and every species in their alliance. The fleet was not an invasion force. It was a statement, a declaration that the days of humanity begging for acceptance were over. Council security monitored the approaching fleet with nervous attention. The ships took up positions around the station, their weapons powered down but clearly ready. A human destroyer, sleek and dangerous, held position directly across from the Council's flagship. The message was clear: we come in peace, but we are not defenseless. Lisa walked through Unity Prime's corridors once more, but everything felt different. Council representatives who had once ignored her now watched her passage with respect and wariness. She was no longer a representative of a provisional member. She was an ambassador of a power that the Council could not dismiss. The council chamber doors opened. Ambassador Shirakai stood waiting inside, along with Elder Mirasun and several other representatives who had advocated for genuine negotiation. But the most significant change was visible throughout the chamber. Council members were standing, something they had never done for a petitioner. Lisa entered with her delegation, representatives from all 15 allied species. They walked to the center of the chamber, and for the first time, they were directed not to the petitioner's platform, but to seats at the main council table. High Chancellor Vector stood at his elevated position, looking down at the human ambassador. She met his gaze steadily, without fear or deference. "Ambassador Grant," he began, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "The Council acknowledges that mistakes were made in our previous dealings with humanity. We invite open discussion about the future of galactic governance and the relationship between our organizations." Lisa remained standing, knowing that every species in the galaxy was watching this moment through broadcast feeds. Her next words would set the tone for everything that followed. "High Chancellor, Earth spent 30 years asking to be treated as equals. You refused. You told us we were not ready, not civilized enough, not worthy of full membership. We left your chamber because we understood that you would never grant freely what we could build for ourselves." She paused, letting her words sink in. "In the months since, we have built an alliance based on principles you claim to support but often fail to practice: mutual defense, equal partnership, protection for all, not just the powerful. Species join us because we offer something better than what the Council provides." Vector started to speak, but Lisa continued. "You invited us here because you now see humanity as a threat. You are correct. We are a threat to the old order, to a system where ancient species control everything and newer ones beg for scraps. But we are not here to overthrow the Council. We are here to offer a choice." She looked around the chamber, addressing all the representatives. "The galaxy is changing. Species want genuine representation, not empty promises. They want leaders who serve them, not systems that serve themselves. You can resist this change and face conflict with an enemy you now know is prepared. Or you can embrace change, reform your institutions, and work with us to build something better." The chamber was absolutely silent. Lisa Grant, who had once stood on the petitioner's platform being dismissed by beings who thought themselves superior, now spoke to them as an equal who held all the leverage. "We did not start this wanting to challenge you," she said quietly. "We wanted to join you. You made that impossible. So we built our own path. Now you must decide whether the Council's future includes partnership with us or endless struggle against us." She sat down, her delegation following suit. They took their seats at the Council table, not as guests, but as powers in their own right. The old order had ended. Whatever came next would be built on new foundations. High Chancellor Vector looked at the human ambassador and her allies, finally understanding the full magnitude of the Council's failure. They had treated humanity as insignificant. Humanity responded by becoming indispensable. They had dismissed Earth's desire for equality. Earth built an alliance where equality was fundamental. The Council wanted to know what humanity would do when told they did not matter. Now they knew. Humanity showed them by making themselves impossible to ignore. "What do you want?" Shirakai asked. "What would it take to avoid this conflict?" "We want what we always wanted," Karen replied. "Recognition as equals. But now we want it for ourselves and for the species who have joined us. We are building something new, Ambassador. An alliance based on mutual respect, rather than ancient hierarchy. If the Council can accept that, we have no quarrel. But if you try to force us back into subordination, you will find that we are no longer the weak petitioners who begged for your approval." The meeting ended without resolution. Shirakai and Zal then returned to Unity Prime with a message that terrified the High Council. Humanity was not bluffing. They were not overreaching. They were simply doing exactly what they had promised, building their own future, with or without council permission. And if the council chose to make it a war, humanity was ready for that too. High Chancellor Vector tried to control the narrative, issuing statements about protocol and the importance of preserving military assets. But the public did not care about protocol. They cared that their government had been willing to let them die while maintaining proper paperwork. In the outer reaches, more species applied to join humanity's alliance. On council worlds, citizens began questioning whether their ancient government still served their interests. And on Unity Prime, in quiet offices where real power was discussed, people began saying something they had never said before. Perhaps humanity was right. Perhaps the council had become something that needed to change or be replaced. Ship. Her mind troubled. She had been part of the council for her entire career, had served with distinction and believed in its mission. But sitting in that conference room, watching representatives from abandoned species speak with gratitude about human assistance, she had felt something unexpected. Shame. The council claimed to represent all civilized species, but they only represented those who were already powerful, already established. Everyone else was left to fend for themselves or beg for scraps of attention. Humans were not begging. They were building, and they were offering others a chance to build with them. When Shirakai reported back to the High Chancellor, she tried to convey the seriousness of the situation. Vector listened, nodded, and dismissed her concerns. "They are playing at politics," he said. "Give them time. They will realize they cannot function without council support." But in the outer reaches, more ships arrived bearing Earth's insignia, more species signed defensive pacts, and in the Sol system, hidden shipyards continued their work, building a fleet that the council would not discover until it was far too late. The screen went dark. Gregory looked at his ambassador with obvious curiosity. "Do you think they will realize what is happening before it's too late?" Lisa gazed out the shuttle window at Unity Prime, the massive station that represented everything the Galactic Council believed about itself. Ancient, powerful, eternal. "No. They are too certain of their own superiority. By the time they understand, we will have already changed the game." The shuttle pulled away from the station, its engines burning bright as it headed toward the jump gate. Behind them, in the council chamber, representatives were already forgetting about the human ambassador and her dramatic exit. It would be discussed for a day or two as an amusing incident, then filed away and forgotten. In 6 months, they would remember. In 6 months, the galaxy would look very different. Humanity had asked permission to join their civilization. The answer had been no. Now humanity would build their own, and they would not ask permission for that.